stand up for a second.
This is Alan Shelton, and long ago, he actually graduated from Corona High School down the street. Wow. He was from Corona, and he's gone off to a major business career with the Fortune 500 companies, and he now does leadership conferences and workshops, and has come out with his first book, which is one thing that's available for all of you who've come, Awakened Leadership. And he just had the yen to come back to Corona and talk to some of the younger people about his journey and what is available out there in the world. So I'm going to let you take it on.
Thank you. And I'll sit because we have such a small group, and we'll make this a little bit of a conversation, and you guys can ask me questions, and we'll and I'll tell you a little bit about what motivated me to write the book, and we'll have a little talk like that. But my family moved to Corona when I was in 3rd grade, and in our first house. Hey, Eugene, come on in. So Eugene will actually know about all of this when I speak about it. So we moved to Corona when I was in 3rd grade, and my family, we lived in a house on Blue Crest. Does anybody know where Blue Crest is? Awesome. So that's the street, if you know where Corona High is, and you know where the Mormon church sits on the corner. Blue Crest runs from the Corona High over to Jefferson Elementary. So, and guess where I went starting in 3rd grade? Jefferson.
I'm a librarian there.
Awesome.
24 years.
So you know what upsets me about Jefferson Elementary is that it's to my mind, it's the most beautiful building in town, and what they've done is they've put a whole bunch of little things around it. What do you call those? Modulars, right? So they took the most beautiful style building in our city, and they circled it with a bunch of modular, and you can't see my favorite building in town anymore, and that's that's just an old Corona person's sense of what that looks like. So I used to walk down Blue Crest every day and go to Jefferson Elementary, and then when I hit 7th grade, they started Letha Rainey Junior High. That was the year they started it, but they didn't have a school yet. So it was just this idea called Letha Rainey Junior High. And so they made us do double sessions at Corona Junior High. So if you were in 7th grade and you were in Corona Junior High, you went at 7 in the morning and you got out, I think, at 12:30. And if you were at Letha Rainey, you started at 1 and you went till 5:30. And so we did a whole year at Corona Junior High that way. And the beginning of my 8th grade year, they actually opened up Letha Rainey, which was really cool. There was no grass or trees, by the way. It was a bunch of buildings sitting on a bunch of dirt. And so if you go up to Letha Rainey and you take a picture of it, put it on your computer, and Photoshop out everything that's green. And that's what it looked like when I started there. And then, of course, I went on. My family, we moved out onto the west end of town, out on Surface Drive, and I finished up at Corona High School in 1971. You graduated from...
Much later.
Yeah. But Corona High. Thank you. I knew he was one of mine. He was a Corona High guy. So to this day, they have more high schools, and it still pains me that we have these schools called Centennial and Santiago and Norco High, and they keep beating my school. And I find that mildly disturbing as an old Corona guy, because I think Corona High should just win every game, in whatever it is they're doing. That's my opinion. So growing up in Corona, was when you look back on it, an amazing experience, because what it did was it gave me this set of incredible stories, and I think the reason I wanted to come back to Corona is because when I come here, I get to be in touch with people who carry those stories. So I can sit and I can talk to Eugene, or I can talk to a Daryl Talbert, or I can name a whole bunch of other people who grew up in my generation, and we all carry these amazing stories. And so when I sat down and I began to write the book, I knew I wanted to write a book. I had done a lot of work in my life as a financial accountant, CPA type guy, but I'd never done leadership work, or I wasn't known for that. I had done work like that, but wasn't known for it. And so I thought, well, I'm getting old, you know. I mean, I didn't have 10 or 15 years to create a new way of being, because if I took that much time, well, you can sort of figure it out. I didn't have that much time. And so I decided to write the book, but I had never written a book before. So here I am, this person who's never written a book. Never have done that. But I luckily had this one friend of mine who had been an editor. And she knew, she had edited leadership books and was very familiar with that. So I thought, well, how am I going to approach this? And so I thought, well, I think I'll take some time off. I'll take a week or two off, and I'll go somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. And I had spent a lot of time in South America, so in my case, a friend of mine has a hotel in South America. So I fly down, and he gives me a room up on the top, you know, where I could be by myself. And I take my computers and I take all my things and I set it all up like I would, wireless, make sure I get my emails, all of that. And now here I am alone by myself and in this room, okay? And my goal is to figure out, how can I write? Because, you know, you guys go to school and you do all this writing, but you got to actually find your voice. There's when you write, you know, if you pick up anyone's book, you have to look at it and you have to say, well, okay, they have their certain style, right? So yes, I could write a sentence. If you asked me to say, how do you get to Corona? I could write a paragraph on, you know, go to the 55, take the 91, get off at this off-ramp, and you're in Corona. I could do that for you. But it didn't have any sense to it or any particular kind of style. So, and I needed to find that. And I didn't even know if I had it. I had no idea if I could write or not, but I was, you know, crazy enough to believe I could. So I went down to South America and I wrote my first chapter and I sent it off to my editor. And about 10 minutes later I get an email back and it says, try that again. No problem. So I got up the next morning and I wrote another chapter. Now these chapters were all of my wisdom, you know, all of the things that I'd found out as I'd gone along. And, you know, I was trying to write like I was, you know, Barack Obama or someone who was really smart. And trying to write like somebody I was, and it wasn't working worth a dang. It just didn't work, you know. But no problem. I sent off my second chapter. 10 minutes later, get an email back, says, throw that one away too. No good. So that irritated me. I got really mad at that point in time. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm going to write a story. And I'll just write a story, and maybe that's a way to sort of break the ice. I'll go back to the beginning. And so when I grew up in Corona, I lived out on the corner of Pinecrest and Surface Club Drive. Does everybody sort of know where that is? Cool. So that's out on the west side of town, okay? And in my day, when you went back up a little ways from that corner, not very far, you ran into what they call the Cleveland National Forest. And in the Cleveland National Forest, there was this big wash. I don't know if anybody remembers, but there was a big wash out there. And you remember there was these big, tall oak trees out there. And you guys know what the big oak trees look like, right? So I'm about, at the time, I think I'm about, I don't know, 12 years old. And the one thing you could see out in those oak trees, that there was these big bundles of green stuff, right? Mistletoe. And the one thing I knew was that at Christmas time, you could sell that stuff, right? So what I did was I took my little BB gun that I had at the time, and I went out into the wash back up in the backside of Corona there, and I went out to where the oak trees were, and I began to shoot. And I got pretty good at this, by the way, where I could actually hit where it grew out of the tree, right? I could take a couple shots and I could hit that, and it would drop a whole thing of mistletoe into your hands, right? That's pretty cool. So what's the cost of my product, right? Couple of BBs, right? And now all I got to do is go buy some baggies, right? Because I can take mistletoe off, put it in the baggies. That's pretty good, you know? Awesome. And the next thing I did is I said, so what's my sales proposition here? Right? I got to think about what's going to induce someone to buy it from me. And I did something that's not my mother didn't appreciate, let me tell you, and that's part of the story. But what I did next was I said, hey, you know what, I got this really cool Boy Scout uniform. Don't use it all that much, to be really honest with you. And I'll bet if I put that thing on, and I go door to door with bags full of mistletoe, then everybody I know will buy this bag and will buy mistletoe from me. And you know what? It worked, right? really, really well until I got down. I started at where Surface Club is, and I was almost down to Avenida del Vista, if you know where that is, right? And so I'm selling, man. In fact, I've had to go back to the house 2 or 3 times. I mean, I'm selling mistletoe like you can't believe, man. I have all my merit badges across. You know, I'm looking good. You know, I got a handle. I got money pouring out of my pockets. I got my little brother at home in the garage making me new bags. I've got a whole factory happening. It's really going well. So, you know, and it would have gone probably even better for days and months at a time, except for who should come driving down the street? Mom. Yeah. So I'm sure that my mother, being a fairly intelligent person like she is, and I'm really sorry, I should have shut that down before we started. Eliminate that. So my mother sees me, and I'm sure she must have said to herself, I wonder what my son's doing 5 blocks away from home with a cardboard box under his arm and in a Boy Scout uniform, because I don't think I've probably ever seen him wear that except for the one time he went to the meeting he went to. So sure enough, Mom pulls me, you know, Mom gets out of the car and comes on over, and when she figures out what I was doing, that ended my very short career of selling mistletoe in the city of Corona. But the reason I tell you all of that is because that was what I decided to write. So I wrote that story, you know, and I sat down and I wrote that story, and I sent it off to my editor. 10 minutes later, the email comes back. Write every single story about your life that you can think of.